Hello, and how are you today? You know, in our hearts, we would all like to hope that if we just have faith, the world and everything around it will be in good shape. People will be nice, people will be friendly, people will be compassionate and thoughtful and forgiving. And yes, those are marvelous aspects and consequences, shall we call them, of faith. But the world isn't there just yet. Those hopes that we have for the outcomes of faith, ultimately we know will find their way in heaven. But for today, our faith is something that also has to be displayed in action. And so we hear in our readings the reality of what faith really does entail. Ultimately, it comes from the concept that St. Paul tells us so oftentimes in his own writings, that it's about the cross. And I think during this Lenten season, it's important for us to appreciate the cross of Christ and how it's essential for all of us, not only to be thankful for it, but also to incorporate the cross in our lives. In our readings today, from the prophet Jeremiah first, we hear how he is in the midst of trying to proclaim the truth of God. He is being, persecuted. He's being undermined by many people, both the religious leaders as well as the local political leaders, because the things he says are harsh. They're hard. That means having to change life. And so there's suffering involved with that. Or Jesus today tells his disciples that he needs to go up to Jerusalem, and there he will be crucified by the religious as well as the Gentiles. Of course, then the two brothers, James and John, come with their mother and ask Jesus that they too could be one at Jesus' right and the other at Jesus' left. And Jesus quizzes them and says, "Are you willing to take up the chalice that I'm going to drink?" And they said, "Oh, of course we will." And Jesus says, and so you will. But it's not as easy as it sounds. And I think we have to be mindful of that as well. Our faith is not just as simple and as easy as it sounds, because the cross is always looming over our faith, but it's also incorporated into it, because there are three aspects of the cross that we always have to be mindful of as part of our faith. First part is sacrifice. We give of ourselves. We give of ourselves back to God in thanksgiving. We give of ourselves to one another in service. Jesus in the gospel even tells us the importance of that today. It's also, the second piece is that all that we are and all that we have is a gift. And gifts are meant to share and be returned. And so we are meant in the living of our faith, not just to hold on and to find our comfort, but to return back to God in thanks, but also to share with others, to make others' lives better, so that what we have received is beneficial to others as well. And lastly, that Lenten cross also involves forgiveness. It requires that we speak on our lips the same words that Jesus did when he was hanging on the cross. "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they're doing." We too have to be willing that even in the living out of our faith, there will be times when it is not accepted, when it is not approved, and yet we know we need to do it nonetheless. And so there will be those who push back. And we need to say, "Father, forgive them. And from the depth of my heart, I do forgive them." It's at times like these, with the sacrifice, with the gift, and with the forgiveness, that we live out the theology of the cross, day in and day out, uniting ourselves with the Lord in the ultimate act that he has done for us to bring us salvation. Not just so that we can tough it out and see how much endurance we can put up with, but truly realizing the fact that just as Jesus said that he would go up to Jerusalem and suffer and die, he also said that he would rise on the third day. And we know that if we unite ourselves with Jesus Christ in his cross, in the sacrifice, in the gift, and in the forgiveness, we will also be united with him in the resurrection. That's Lent, leading up to the joy of Easter. May we all be willing to be one in Christ with his dying, so that we can be one with Christ in his rising. God bless, and have a good day.